As above, so below, as within, as without. Welcome to Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology Podcast, episode 16, The Decans of the Zodiac, part 3. I am your host, Ezekiel La Rosa, and today I am joined by astrologer and author Michael Suter. Continuing our series today on the Decans of the Zodiac, which, if you're not familiar with those, they are subdivisions of each of the zodiac signs into three subsections of 10 degrees each. I would also recommend you going back and watching part 1 and 2. Even though there really isn't a specific order, I guess, but all in all, it kind of helps, I suppose, to see the more cohesive patterns throughout the zodiac by seeing the whole thing as a work. And we'll have a fourth part coming out as well. Today, we're focusing on the signs of Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. So, Michael, welcome back again. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Ezekiel. Glad to be doing it. This is great.
Yeah. All right. Excited for this one because it's a sign, the sign of Libra. I have 3 planets here, so it's a very, very personal placements for me. My Sun, my Mars, and my Mercury. So, checking. So, quite relatable, I'm sure, with the stuff we're going to get into here. So, let's go ahead and dive into the first decan of Libra, which the tarot card associated with it, the minor arcana, is this card. Can't see it. The lighting isn't super great. It's the 2 of Swords. This is the 3rd deck I'm using here, and I believe Michael's got the Rider-Waite deck, which is also very, very good to see. Yeah, okay, the light's really glaring, but anyway, you can look it up yourself. But anyways, it's a good image too. Yeah, there you go. That's the classic image right there. The woman with her eyes blindfolded and the 2 swords. You have the moon in the background there.
Yep.
The rulers of this decan are the moon by the Chaldean order and Venus by triplicity. So it's a very feminine decan for, well, Venus's sign too. So anyways, why don't you start us off with this first decan, Michael?
Sure. So in order to, like, the decans are a continuum. So like we are moving we're moving out of the summer now. We're moving into fall, and our last decan of Virgo, which we discussed last time, was really oriented towards death. And now in the the sort of the Persephone interpretation of the zodiac, we're now in the underworld. The goddess herself has gone into the underworld, and she is with Pluto at this point. So this is a decan that is very concerned with justice. The first decan is it's often depicted by the character with a trumpet or like some sort of a horn in the classic artwork and imagery. And also the sword of justice is another thing that you'll see fairly often. So the topics
that's a pretty Libra symbol. Sorry, that's a pretty Libra symbol anyway. The sword.
Oh yeah,
Goddess with the scales in one hand and the sword of justice. So like, what is she judging? What is she weighing? Right. So in the right hand, they got the sword, and in the left hand, you have the scales. So that's archetypically very Libra. But anyways, carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. But
yeah, no problem. And you'll find depictions of Mott here with the scales of justice weighing the heart and such. This is all very Egyptian in a lot of ways, what we got going on here. So this is a decan that's very concerned about fairness, relationships, mediation, and careful assessment. This is a place where we decide when we're going to say something about injustice. What is injustice, and when does it rise to the level that we should engage with it and start blowing that horn that the guys has in those images? It's this the character is it's sort of putting itself out there when you start blowing the horn of justice and you say, hey, this is wrong, this is something's going on wrong here. Then we need to essentially it's the decision whether we're going to wake up the town, that's create a fuss over something, or we're going to let this pass. If there's a minor injustice, generally we let it go. If somebody gives you not enough change back from you buy something, it's like no big deal, we're going to let that go. But this decan really asks this question: when do you say something? When do you let things go? So it's interesting because the two planets here Venus and the moon, they're going to have kind of different reactions to this often, because the moon is going to be more likely, might be more likely to let things go, you know, whereas Venus is much more likely to engage in the question of is this just, or is it not? And the question, one of the things that comes up when we start blowing the horn of justice is, are we a hypocrite? You know, we really need to think about things. If we start saying something else is unjust, like, what are we doing? Like, it draws attention to yourself, and you start like, you know, making a fuss about something, and then all of a sudden, all of your issues come up. You know, suddenly you can look like a real terrible hypocrite if you, you know, if you start blowing the horn of justice, and there's no reason for it. So it's the image of the woman, you know, with the sword. This is, you know, very typical. This justice is supposed to be blind. But justice is also very much oriented towards what the society finds acceptable. So you need to get into, there is no real justice when you think about it, because it's changes through time. It changes with various you know, paradigms of thought. You know, like in our current day and age, we have people who are you know, if you get misgendered, or you know, somebody says the wrong pronoun or something, you're an outcast. So this is a big topic right now that we you know, that Libra is bringing up, and we're entering an age of air overall. So it's like, you know, with contextualizing this, these are things that are gonna come up.
Right. So our ideas of justice, not justice in essence itself, because, you know, universal justice is very different than what humans conceive of as justice. Essentially, right? Venus is more concerned with, well, it's the social norms of etiquette of what's acceptable and what's not. Where you're saying the moon maybe is maybe more passive, and it's more internal and maybe more reserved.
Right. Yeah.
But it's kind of also, but with Venus coming up to this point of when's enough is enough. When is it necessary to break the peace because the peace has been disturbed already sufficiently? So it's one of the titles of the card, the Two of Swords, is I understand is the Lord of Peace Restored, or at least that was an older title. So it already implies that the peace has been upset. It's been shaken. That the scales aren't actually fair. They're not actually level. There's definitely this pendulum swing that has polarized things in some way, where they're not actually balanced. So it's that constant play, right, in between what we call the left hand, the right hand, or, you know,
right.
All the polarities that could possibly exist in terms of, like, where do you draw the line? Where's that median point, which is always going to be subjective to our times, right? As you're saying before, today's day of justice is very different than social justice, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, whatever.
Exactly.
So I guess that's what you're speaking to. Okay, cool. Anything else you want to add to this particular decan, or in terms of maybe having a luminary there, or other ways that this decan can, you can see it indicating it affecting a native, let's say, or something like that.
Right. Yeah. If you have a luminary there, like, I mean, planets there are going to tend to look through this lens of justice. You know, there's going to tend to be the lens that they're going to look through. And if you have a planet there, like Uranus or something like that, it's you know, that's a really bad fit in a lot of ways, because that's Uranus is going to do what the hell it wants.
Very disruptive. That's more. That would be more of a collective manifestation too. Sure, in a person's native chart, depending on if it's one of the angles, like if it's Libra rising in the first house of the Uranus there in the first decan, that's certainly going to be you know, somebody that's not your traditional justice keeper, or, you know, your passive Libra. It's going to be somebody that definitely has a lot of very more erratic revolutionary ideas, and they're not going to be necessarily be very Venusian about it per se.
Yeah, exactly.
But collectively speaking, you know, in the general collective, because you're wherever Uranus is in, it's kind of marking the times of, you know,
exactly. Yeah.
Whatever the status quo is, I guess, you know, the same with Neptune and Pluto.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Like Venus here is going to, you know, that it's a perfect fit for Venus, because you've got that the weighing of justice. Somebody, you know, was probably going to be very interested in what other people think, and trying to get you know, other people's input in things. Weighing a lot of opinions. There's a classic sort of truism for this decan and Libra in general, that it's hard to make decisions, because you don't often know when you've got enough information. It's like, have I really taken the other person's you know, feelings and ideas into account enough? It can be a real pitfall where it's like you can't make it. It's tough to make a decision. It can be really difficult. It's
I get
something.
that. Yeah, yeah. For myself, look, I have Mercury here in the first
Yep,
decan. So kind of what you're speaking to already really resonates in that sense of always trying to collect more data and kind of analyze things and maybe overanalyze things, like overthink things
right.
perhaps in that sense. And precisely what you said there. So that definitely resonates with me personally.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And it's Mercury's pretty strong in Libra in general.
Mm-hmm.
It's a sign of the goddess, and Mercury likes to be close to the goddess. It's
Mm-hmm.
his pursuit is to be near the goddess. We're going to get to the third decan is a Mercury Jupiter decan, so we'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to the
To the second decan. Yes.
second decan.
Second decan of Libra. The ruler by the Chaldean order is Saturn, and also Saturn for the triplicity ruler. So a double Saturn decan we have here. The card itself already kind of expresses that. It's the Three of Swords, which is the Lord of Sorrow.
Yeah,
And there you go, the classic one with a heart
classic.
with three swords through it. So this
Yeah,
rendition is also really good too. I think the art here also is kind of that very dark Saturnian,
yep.
feel to it. I mean, both cards I really loved how they really express the energies of this particular deck, and
Yeah,
very
yeah.
good.
This is a fascinating decan in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is Saturn showing up doubly here in his exaltation, as we know. So this is
Exactly.
very, very powerful Saturn. And it's a side of Saturn that it's sometimes going to be easy to forget, because this is the diplomatic Saturn, the Saturn who sits across from you at the negotiating table and tries to weigh what you're saying versus his ideas. And it's a very different Saturn than you get in Capricorn or in other places. And it's
Or Aquarius. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So this is Saturn in a fairly beneficent manifestation, but still you got that card there, and it's not lying.
Mm-hmm.
So the image that Austin likes to use is links in a chain, which are
Oh, okay.
bound together through a social contract.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool idea. It's there's a lot of imagery that you get here that is like marriage oriented. This is
Mm-hmm.
when we sign a contract, and we've done, like, the first decan of Libra is when we're doing all of our reconnaissance. We're looking out, we're trying to weigh everything, we're taking in all the information, trying to figure out what's right. In the
Mm-hmm.
second decan, we've decided that we can who we can trust, like who are the peoples that we are going to be on our side, and we're bringing them into our sphere, and therefore they're like we're coming like links in a chain with these other people and creating social contracts with them. And again, marriage is a really good example of this, because this is most people don't go into marriage lightly. It's something that you want to weigh all of, get a lot of information about this person before you decide, that this is the person that you want to have in your life. So it's a binding by promise is another thing. It's like this sense of, making a verbal promise, making a verbal contract. And the counter side of that is that when we've made those contracts, we become vulnerable to those people. So if somebody says to you, I hate you and I'm gonna do everything I can to like stab you in the back, then when they stab you in the back, you expected it coming. But the people who you brought in by social contract, when they do that to you, there's like heartbreak. There's like, it's a real like wounding of this profound sort.
Yes, betrayal.
Yeah, betrayal, exactly. So this is what we get in this decan is like social contracts. It's in a very legalistic sort of place. Financial entanglements. This is a this is a decan that it's not a bad place to make like a contract or make the financial entanglements with people. But again, it's like the downside is that when you do that, you become vulnerable to people and to betrayal. So now one of the things about this decan that's really interesting is it's often one of the emblematic characters of this is sort of this sub-archetype of Saturn who's named Kairos. And Kairos is the god of the moment. This is not the god of time. That's that's Chronos. Chronos is like calendrical time. It's linear time.
Right.
Kairos is the god of the right time. It's the
Mm-hmm.
right time, the time you choose to do things. So this decan is
the opportune moment. Right.
the right moment.
Right.
It's often linked to archery, because
Okay.
it's like when do you let that arrow go, and what angle do you let it go at?
Mm-hmm.
So archery is often like thought of here, and weaving. Weaving is another thing, because there's a very strong timing element to like weaving, to do things at the right time, which is, if you weave, apparently it's something you'd know about. I don't do that. But so this decan has a lot to do with the electional astrology, really, because this is like Kairos is the god of electional astrology, really.
Mm-hmm.
He's often thought of as having like a front ponytail, like a little lock of hair coming off the front of his head, and you're supposed to grab him by that lock of hair, and it's really difficult, because you got to have just exactly the right timing to grab him by that lock of hair, which is kind of a fun image. But it's an interesting like subset of Saturn's sub archetype, and it's sort of more playful than than Saturn is usually thought of. It's kind of this and it also links Saturn into astrology in a way that people sometimes don't think about. So we can move on to Libra 3 now. So we're starting to see how this sign is unfolding.
Right. So for the second, real quick. Right. So that's the card correspondent is the Four of Swords. The ruler by the Chaldean order is Jupiter, and then Mercury is the triplicity ruler, as you already alluded to earlier. So 4.
Yep. Oops, I grabbed the wrong card. I'm afraid I don't have the card for Libra 4. Sorry about that.
Okay, well, it's a knight kind of laying on like a coffin, and he's got those 4 swords, and there's also a stained glass window up in the corner. It's very iconic too.
Yeah, it's very.
People can just look it up if they're not familiar with it. But the Rider-Waite Smith deck. But anyway, I see 4 swords.
So, absolutely.
So Jupiter, Mercury.
Yep, Jupiter, Mercury. So this is really the decan where we start to think about balance in a more profound way. We get to the point where we want to be in balance in our life, and it is possible to take that too far. One of the images that Austin uses for this decan is the gyroscope, and some other images that you get often are like the inebriated Buddha. Like there's a lot of these characters who are like it doesn't seem like they should be in the state of enlightenment, because they're all they seem like they're drunk, they seem like they're they're messed up, they're on drugs or something. But there's actually like this incredible connection to the universe, and the gyroscope is a good image because like in the center of the gyroscope, it's like stable. As you move towards the outside, things become more and more off balance. And if you try and stay in the center all the time, you never go anywhere. You literally get nothing done, and you're just sitting there trying to like maintain the status quo. In order to actually get anything done, to make progress in the world, to get what you need, you've got to move to the outer parts, where things are kind of, the periphery is like moving really quickly. And you have to be very careful as you move into the periphery so that you don't get thrown off, essentially. So this really begs the question of like, can we ever be in balance? Because like every time we take a step forward, we're essentially throwing our weight forward, and we're off balance, but we then find our balance again with the next footstep, and we're always doing this in all things. There's a lot of images of debauchery and wild partying and extreme excess that are oriented towards this, and you can kind of think of that as like a a deconditioning. This is sort of like a tantric kind of thing where you're violating the rules in a Venusian way. You can be having a great time, But you're like, there's sort of a spiritual aspect to this, where there's like, you're breaking the conditioning, you're stepping out into a place where like it's dangerous, because you can use too much alcohol, you can use too many drugs, you can go out and have parties and stuff, and it's like there's a lot of pitfalls in this place. But go ahead.
That's like the Jupiter manifestation, I guess you could say. That the excess, the too much expansion, the just
Yes. Yep.
overly it's too much, right?
Yeah, exactly. And we're back to the last time we saw Jupiter and Mercury decan was the first decan of Gemini. So this is the Gemini decan of Libra, because this is as you know, when you go through the decans, you're basically moving to the next decan, and then the next the next sign. So this is going to have a bit more of a Geminian kind of vibe to it, where you can do anything. Like that decan is all about like I can do this, I can do that, I can do all sorts of things. But here we're like there's this really profound part of it, which is like can we stay balanced when we're out there trying to do all these things, and how do we decide what's going to work? So that's the it's the meditating saint. This is often the tarot card is called a rest from strife, but it's not really a rest from strife. It's like it's more about the strife and then coming back from the strife. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's without that strife. It's not just rest. It's about the strife. It's about getting into it and then finding balance in that peripheral like place where we're in a
there's movement. It's not static, right? It's like like rock hopping. Like you could stand on one rock with river, and you're just going to stay there if you're trying to stay balanced. But in order to get across, you have to keep hopping to the next one. You could potentially lose your balance. Hit your head, go under. So it's a dangerous thing. But with every step, right foot, left foot, you're catching yourself each time. Your balance until you can get your destination. In that sense, just a very literal way. So let's see, with like a luminary here, let's say a sun or something like that, being, let's say, you're hosted by the benefic Jupiter and Mercury, which is also well placed. Would you, when you would read this, would you then look at where, let's say, Jupiter or Mercury is placed natally to kind of assess the dignity? Let's say like a sun here, since the sun is fallen in Libra, let's say.
Right.
Would you, is that one way maybe that you would?
I mean, you're going to get some
list of things.
There's definitely a tendency towards excess here, like towards potentially like or at least experimentation with various things. It doesn't necessarily mean like you're out getting messed up all the time, but it certainly can mean a lot of experimentation and trying to find that balanced center. So the sun in Libra is doing Venus's work, any planet that's in another sign. So there's a lot of beneficence here, but there's a lot of potential for the sun leads by example, and in Libra, the sun is really busy trying to make beauty. It's really like you think about the sunsets in Libra season and, in the Northern Hemisphere, and they can be some of the most beautiful sunsets. Like just, it's like, the sun has just dedicated itself to doing, making beauty and such. And here there's no, it's the same thing, but it's a bit more philosophical. This is as I said, it's the drunken master is another archetype that emerges from this particular area. We got a guy who's so far beyond like anybody's understanding,
like divine madness or being divinely drunk or something like that is what comes to mind. The idea that you're in this place of ecstasy that's beyond. It's not like reckless and decadent per se, but you're not really sober either. You're just in this other place, like inebriated on into a higher state, I guess you could say. So there's really no way to explain it unless you've experienced it, I suppose. It's just one of those experiences that you just can't really be put into words. But I see what you're saying. So sort of a stage that you wouldn't see him as being very sage or saintly-like in his behavior, but there's kind of an ironic, what would I say? It can seem paradoxical, but it's actually fine. There's nothing necessarily inherently. It's just people judge things from a very narrow lens sometimes, and so that they're unable to see the other side of of the coin, I guess you could
Right,
say,
right, yeah,
so to speak. But
yeah, yeah. This you might find
okay.
like a just like your average drunk on the on the road who's actually like some amazing like prophet who's like said
Mhm.
the things that come out of their mouth are just
Or they're in
like
some disguise. It's kind of like I see also as Mercury in disguise as like a beggar on the street, but then you realize,
right,
or a king, or kind of the king that got went into disguise, and then some people come into their home, and then he reveals himself as the king or something like that, where he
yeah, yeah.
allegedly tales like that kind of come to mind. I've heard there's stories like that in mythology of
Right. There's a lot
going
of
into
Odin. If you got
Odin particularly is who
yeah,
comes to mind.
Mercury
Yeah,
here could be a very Odin like the guy who's
Mercury
wandering
Odin, right?
around and
Yeah,
you know that's one of the reasons for that hospitality was considered so important in ancient cultures because you don't know when this guy's going to show up essentially
yeah.
when
You don't
this
know when the gods are going to assume human form and essentially, be in your presence and all that.
right,
Okay,
right,
interesting. Okay,
yeah, so
yes.
it's a particularly interesting decan as well.
Yeah.
So I'm going to just say a few things about Scorpio before we get into it because there's something
Okay.
very interesting about the way the whole decanic order happens. Now, so we'll go back to the first decan of Aries, and you remember it was a Mars decan.
Right. Right.
And if you do the math, and there's 7 planets, and if there's three per 3 decans per sign.
Hmm.
So the whole thing resets at 210 degrees because that's 7 times 3, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
that brings us back to the beginning again. So when we get from the beginning of Aries to the beginning of Scorpio, we've reset the whole thing. You see what I'm
Ah.
saying?
Yep.
So
With
we're
Mars
back
once
to
again.
Mars, and we're back to a Mars decan.
Exactly.
So
Yes. Yes.
we've got a little bit of a very interesting, like, there's sort of this martial thing about decans in general, because decans are not like something that you get from if you have a decanic dignity, it's not something you get from being a citizen. It's not something you get from your lineage. It's something that's just within you, that's emergent within you. So that's, it's
Hmm.
very martial. It's this emergent energy that's coming from within, coming from the darkness. So we're back again to Mars, and this is like one of the most powerful places that Mars you'll ever find Mars. The
Oh
first
yeah.
decade.
Which is why it's kind of, well, in my
Yeah.
opinion, and well, I know a lot of traditional astrologers, it's preposterous to put Pluto there because this is a very Martian zone in the zodiac. Scorpio is very Mars. If you don't see that connection, then you guess haven't really understood Mars completely.
Right.
So the minor arcana card associated with this is the Five of Cups, which is the Lord of Disappointment, is what it's
Yep.
titled. Move it over a little bit. Oh
Right.
yeah, there you go. And then again, just kind of that same kind of sorrow, disappointment. The five chalices all scattered about. Well, two remaining, three. So it's kind of like there's a loss, but then there's two that remain upright. So it's like not entirely a loss, I guess is part of
Right.
how I would read that. And and here it's an inverted pentagram is the shape that they make, and you see kind of like a broken heart at the top with the two petals. So
Precisely.
very very fitting imagery. Uh, anyway, so right, being it's a very Martian decan, very masculine in that sense, but it's also a feminine sign. Actually, most people maybe don't
Yes.
realize it's Scorpio is a feminine. So it's Mars's feminine side. So it's not
Absolutely.
feminine like you think of femininity necessarily, but
Right.
right.
So this decan is when you have Mars here, he has basically every single, potentially every single dignity you can get in astrology, because
Mhm.
there's some parts of this decan that are also bound. So this is he can potentially have everything here. This is like and it's very interesting because this decan is all about desire and hunger.
Mm.
And the card is like, it's interesting because this is a character who has so much desire, so much potential, like hunger for what they want. They're like so
Mm.
projected to what they want that, like, when that thing that they want actually manifests, there can be a great deal of disappointment when you actually get it. This
Yes.
character, yeah, this guy's kind of pouting, in the RWS tarot. It's you know, he looks like he's, you know, kind of pissed off, you know, but this is a guy who went out and went for it. He got, you know, went for everything. He got everything that he wanted, and he's pissed off because he got it and it wasn't what he thought it was going to be.
Yeah,
So
or
there's
it wasn't
this,
fulfilling, because
yeah, it
imagine
wasn't
if you
fulfilling.
get everything you want, after a while, it just stops being, life loses its kind of its joy, because essentially anything you want, you have it, and but eventually it just, everything just loses its appeal after a time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Yep.
just,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
yeah,
So
continue with what you're saying.
it's kind of brings up this, the questions of satisfaction versus satiation, you know, when you've
Hmm.
got everything and then you're satiated and like, you know, this wasn't what I really wanted. I got to go, you know, there's a great deal of hunger too. So like people, natives with like a Mars here are often going to have an amazing amount of hunger and desire, and just like a well of hunger for like, and if you have an artist, you know, this is somebody who's just like hungry and they're going to go out and they're going to do everything that they can
Hmm.
do in order to you know, to get to where they want to be. And it
Hmm.
can be, you know, it doesn't mean they're like, it's all going to be nice. They can be like, you know, cutting heads off and like, you know, doing things that are completely um not not in a
Unscrupulous. Just, yeah.
unscrupulous. Yeah,
Yeah, very good.
there's no reason to think that this is going on in a particularly virtuous way.
Hmm.
Um, so the hunger, you know, it gives people an incredible focus, and like one of the things Austin says, it's like a horse that if you can put the blinders on this horse, it will take you really far. But if you can't put the blinders on the horse, the thing can like just go nuts. You know, it's not going to take you where you want to go. Like your hunger is just gonna like, it's
Mm.
gonna like well up, and like you're gonna go after this, you're gonna go after that, and you know. There's another image is like the hunter. This is like the hunter who goes out and has like you know, that focus where they're gonna take the thing down. They're gonna, you know, it's that unyielding focus on getting the thing that you want.
Hmm.
Um, it's raw. It is volatile, and moods like another thing is because this is a it is a feminine sign, so you gotta like you get ideas like moodiness, you know, like the
Hmm.
emotional state where you get like a very volatile emotional state. This is the
Hmm.
Martian, you know, volatility where there's like eruptions essentially of volatility. Now, like one of the things that when I talk about, you know, like modern astrologers will give this sign over to Pluto,
Hmm.
and there is a martial aspect to Pluto in that he, you know, I write about this fair amount where he literally erupts from the ground to steal Persephone. In that moment where
Sure.
he's going after Persephone, he's trying to take her and bring her into his world. That's very martial, you know, that
Sure.
desire to bring her
Hmm.
in. But what he does with her after that, the hoarding, is a very Saturnine thing. So you get in Pluto sort of this like
Saturn and Mars
Saturn
aspects.
and Mars,
Right. Right.
both aspects. You get both malefics. You get a Mars in Capricorn kind of like vibe off of Pluto. You know, that's it's both
Hmm.
things, and you can't really pull it apart. It's both things. So
Hmm.
this deckhand, you can kind of see that Plutonian, like you know, it's often the natives here might keep their cards close to their you know, to their chest. They might like not show what they want, but then like they'll go like a, you know, a laser beam and get it.
Oh yes.
But whether they're happy after they get it's another matter.
Hmm. Right. Scorpio is a very fairly private sign,
Yeah,
already, and one of the images that actually Austin Coppock has spoken about for Mars in Scorpio. Scorpio, unlike Aries, you can think of Mars and Aries as like a soldier with a machine gun, just outright, just jumping
yeah,
out and just going, going nuts. Whereas the Scorpio Mars is more like a sniper, either in a tower or in the tall grass, just right there with, just in its lens, waiting very patiently for the moment to just
yep,
get
yep.
get its target,
Word.
and just, it's, again, that's kind of like the idea of the archetype of the scorpion. It's a creature that goes very low, and you don't see it coming before it stings, or a serpent
Yeah.
too, or an eagle. It's up in a tree and it's got this sharp vision. It can see all the ground, everything all around it, and just in a moment it can
Precisely.
just swoop out and get it.
Yep,
So
yep.
one more
The
thing I wanted
eagle.
to say about this area or this zone of the zodiac, because during the path of the sun, this is the portion of the zodiac that's associated with the realm of the dead. It's right around Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, and Halloween.
Yeah.
So they say the veil is very thin between the living and the dead realms around this time. Is there anything you'd want to say?
Yeah, we're going to get into that. The next decan is actually all about that.
Okay, so it's not quite here.
Yeah, the next decan is actually the dead center of the season. So that's Scorpio 2 gets into that.
Right. That's the rulers for that are the Sun by Chaldean order and Jupiter by triplicity. And the minor arcana associated with this is the Six of Cups, which is the Lord of Pleasure. There you go. Right.
Yep.
Right away. Very good.
Yep. There we go.
Cool.
All right. So this is, as you said, this is Sun and Jupiter, and this is in a lot of ways the most beneficent decan of Scorpio. It's still not really a safe place.
Sure, but within Scorpio, at least.
Within Scorpio, yeah. It's still Scorpio. It's still like volatile. There's still stuff can go really wrong here. It's a very alchemical decan. This is where the two become one. This is where two forces can really join together, and it's a very, as I mentioned, Tantra before in the third decan of Libra. This is actually very tantric this is very sex magic oriented decan.
Okay.
It's like two substances become one. This is mutual intersecting desire. So again, there's a very strong desire and will and hunger. But here's where like two consenting people find this this place where their desire comes together, where the hunger comes together, and they're able to make something that's much larger out of that. There's a lot of contention potentially here. It's like when two people become like enmeshed in this way, this sort of gives us back to the a Cancerian sort of vibe, where we've got two people like really like so enmeshed that like when things start to go bad, it's like you can get negative feedback loops where there's like, there's so much in sync, but like there's this bad thing that's starting to happen, and there's just allowing this thing to like build up and build up and build up. There's like, it's not necessarily conscious here, that this can be a very it is a feminine and emotional place. So it's like, this is again where the emotions can like get out of control, where there's like, it can go wrong for sure. But again, it is the most like it's the most beneficent place, and this is, as you said, this is where Halloween is. So the veil is thin. It's a discovery of the essence of life, like and death. It's like, when the child finds their parents in their bedroom, and they're like either doing things they shouldn't see, or the parent is like literally on their deathbed. It's this sort of potential for trauma where we lose our innocence here. This is it's a place of things that are so profound that they're not for children. They're very like very adult, very focused, and they can be used for sure for good or for bad. This sort of alchemy can be like this can be dark magic 100%. It's not necessarily going to come out good.
Okay. One moment before we can proceed. I actually need to plug something in real quick, so I'll be right back.
Okay. No, well, not in any meaningful way. I think it's fine.
All right, I'm back.
Okay.
Very good. All right, thanks.
All right.
All right, very good. So
yeah. So this decan is also linked very much to medicine or poison. So it's again that kind of thing where you get like snake venom or the venom of the scorpion.
Okay. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
if you use venom in a healing way, if you use it like very small doses, you can become completely immune to the bites of snakes, and that was a common thing in ancient times
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
to become to slowly dose yourself with these venoms, and then you become something that's fairly almost superhuman. But it's also like you can kill yourself doing that. There's no question.
Sure.
You can end your life pretty easily. So there's a lot of danger here, but there's potential for extraordinary power.
Mm.
So
Having Neptune in this decade comes to mind with you saying that kind of the idea, because Neptune being associated with poisons and
right,
toxins, maybe superpowers of some sort.
yeah,
So it'd
absolutely.
be interesting to explore when Neptune was last transiting this decan of Scorpio.
That would have been the
Well,
early
sort of from
60s,
early when?
early 60s,
In the 60s. Oh, okay, interesting period. Okay, all right,
50s
all right.
and 60s actually. Yeah, 50s and
Okay.
60s.
Hmm.
Yeah. So moving on to Scorpio 3.
Right. Third decan, the ruler by the Chaldean order is Venus, and by triplicity is the moon.
Yep.
Minor arcana here we have is the Seven of Cups, the Lord of
So,
Debauch. There you
yep.
go. Seven as well. Both very good.
Yep.
Kind of a swampy terrain. At least in this decade, it makes me think of that, the idea of I don't know, being in a swamp. So Venus here finds herself kind of in a terrain that's not really to her liking. It's kind of contrary to what the Venusian, Taurian or Libran would be, or
Right.
Piscean for that matter.
Right. Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
we've got the two feminine archetypes here, and they're
right.
both in
As
very
with the first decan of Libra again. So we're kind of
yes.
we're sort of resetting that. So
Yep. We're back here
correlation there.
again. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
In a very different place here. So
Sure. Right.
we've got the two feminine archetypes, and they are both in trouble essentially. The moon is in fall, and Venus is in detriment. So this decan is like it's like the ghost of desires past. This is
Hmm.
the souring of relationships. When relationships go bad, it's when we look back at a relationship that we had and it's done, and we miss it terribly, and we don't know how to get it back. And we can obsess over this sort of like we get some sort of idea about some person that we want in our lives, and we obsess about that person, and we lose track of whether this is am I spending my time well on this? Am I lost in like a reverie, a deluded state of my my emotions are I'm either stuck in the past, or I'm like wanting something so badly. So this is a difficult place.
Mm-hmm.
um, one of the ideas here is like alone in the woods. This is a
Mm.
place of solitude, of danger. Again, you get this sense of like we got the moon here, so we got a loss of innocence. Just like the last decan, we've got this feeling of like maybe we've grown up a little too soon, or we've seen something that's like taken us out of the place where we're believing in love. We don't believe in love anymore. We're like
Mm.
we've become traumatized by something that happened early on, or all of these things are very much at play in this. There's a longing for innocence. It's a longing for of what was, of the golden age too, like looking back at something that we really wish we could have again.
Mm.
These are things that take us out of the present and bring us into this sort of a reverie. But what can happen here is like natives that have a one of these planets here, like Venus,
Like
it
Venus, yeah. Mm.
can give you a great insight into human nature and how people's
Psychology.
um, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. The like this would be a great decan for like therapists or people who have who work with people who have like traumatic experiences, and they need people who understand that kind of
Yes.
thing, and people can really capitalize on that ability to empathize with what it means to have in many ways have your, your innocence dashed, and like, or be so obsessed with somebody and you need to like be brought through that experience. So that's kind of the upside of it, is this incredible like knowledge of human nature, and the darker side of it, and being able to wade into that dark side and pull people back out, go in there and get them back out. So that's kind of, and that's the you got the moon there. That's kind of the moon too, because the moon is like, bringing you back to a place of innocence after you've gone through something that's martial. And it's kind of like, you can see that the guy in the first decan, the people who came in contact with the guy in the first decan, these are the people who are like in the third decan, somebody who had that kind of who may have traumatized them because he was so like focused on something, and like, you can see this kind of like the person gets the other person, they like meld together in the second decan into this, they bring about this incredible like magic medicine for each other. And then in the third decan, that's gone. It's gone. They had it, it's gone. What do you do? How do you move on?
The first decan, or at least in the minor arcana, is kind of alluding to that, to the third decan in a way.
The
sorrow.
It is. Right? Yeah, the sorrow. Yeah, the like, I got what I wanted. That wasn't really what I wanted. I'm not sure. Like, how do I get that back?
Yeah.
So there's
a relatability, like with what you were saying in terms of that, this being a good decan for people that are therapists, or people that have the ability to empathize with other people through understanding, possibly by having experienced similar things themselves earlier in life, and therefore that kind of qualifies them in a unique way to be of assistance, because they can authentically relate to people.
Precisely.
It's not.
There's
nothing performative about it in that way.
If you have Venus here, you also may be able to make art out of it. You may be able to tell a story about it. You might be able to like put it into your art, and then like have something come out of it that has some incredible like cathartic ability to bring people through this cathartic experience. So it's got some beauty to it. It's got some real potential for for healing.
I've always found Venus in Scorpio is a very interesting placement, because it on the surface seems very antithetical, but again, going deeper into layers, like now the third decan, you can see certain places where Venus actually has a very unique expression that actually can be very beautiful and actually very healing. So again, that's the thing with dignity, to not assume just because the planet is in a phase of bad dignity that just means the planet is kind of screwed, essentially. That it's not that black and white necessarily. That there's specific places that, depending on the degree, look at what degree, and then by that see what decan that falls into, and therefore you can analyze it that way. And then with Venus, let's say, then maybe looking also at where natal Venus, or if let's say we're talking about a sun there or something, maybe look at where the planets that rule that decan are, is in correspondence to kind of support and give a little bit more signification and context to that placement.
Absolutely. Yep. And somebody with a Mars in this decan is going to be super powerful too, but it's going to probably have this more melancholy kind of vibe about it. The less like crazy drive for more on the disappointment side than the the hunger side. You might get much more on that like, damn it, like I had it, and so that's gone. It's interesting when you put the ruler of these decans through their own, through that, you can get some interesting things happening.
Sweet, sour, or the bitters at the end of it. So it's a whole experience. The Scorpio experience is a whole thing. I mean,
it is absolutely
fascinating. All right, are you ready to move to Sagittarius next now?
Yeah, let's move to Sagittarius.
Okay, right. The first decan of Sagittarius is ruled by the Chaldean order, by Mercury, and by triplicity by Jupiter.
Correct.
Here's the minor arcana. It's the 8 of Wands, which is the Lord of Swiftness, is what it's called. So that swiftness already, sounds very mercurial already from the sound of it. Being very, very quick, very agile. I've always really loved this particular depiction. The artwork here actually inspired a piece I did one time. I like the geometric shapes and colors of all of that. But anyway, and yours as well. We move it over a little bit. It's a little out of focus from the camera. Move it a little bit more to your right. I guess, yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, it's a little more plain, but then again, yeah, just 8 wands flying in the air, but right, it still kind of gets the message across.
Yep. Yeah, it's
Right.
one of the only cards I think in the whole like RWS that does not have a person in it. There's
Okay,
no
right.
people in it.
I
Yeah,
guess
so
so, yeah.
it's kind of unique because of that.
Mhm.
So this is this is interesting as far as the decanic decans go, because if you look directly across the zodiac, you get the exact same rulers again, which is, I don't think that happens anywhere else. You get the first decan of Gemini, it's Jupiter and Mercury, and here again we have Jupiter and Mercury, and
Mhm.
there's something very the two are very much in line in some ways, which is kind of interesting because this is where my ascendant and my descendant are. So
Oh, okay,
um,
right.
yeah, so this decan has a lot to do with giving things wings, like getting things to move, getting things to like take off. This is where things go viral. And
Okay.
this is often linked to sickness, interestingly enough. This is like
Oh, okay.
this is like the plague. This is like you can start a plague here. These are things that, you put them out there and all of a sudden they catch fire in people's minds or in their body.
Hmm.
So this is like, somebody writes a song and it like, all of a sudden it's like everybody's singing the song and like they can't stop it. It's like, it's like St. Vitus dance where, people are like getting the streets and then they're all dancing and they're like
It's
going crazy.
contagious. Okay, right. But you could seem
Yeah,
good or positive, but then has a malefic effect to it. So that's what you mean by sickness, in a sense that it's
yeah,
kind of
literally.
goes
Yeah,
a little out of control, right? Like you're saying,
yeah,
like
yeah.
okay.
This is so people here with Mercury, this is the mercurial part is clearly the making things go fast. This is and
Mm-hmm.
there's often links, of course, to horses because we're in Sagittarius. So you gotta have
Mm-hmm.
horses in Sagittarius.
Yep.
This is a steed that will take you far and fast, and that the Jupiter aspect is the focus. This is where you get the expansive focus. So you've put this mercurial aspect of speediness and getting around things, looking at them from all the different angles, which is what Mercury does, and you get this Jupiterian aspect, which is like pure focus and like a mission. It's like being on a mission. And this decan is often like people here will be like all of a sudden they will they'll have an epiphany. This is like it's a decan of epiphanies where you all of a sudden like oh, I know what I have to do. I got to do it right now. I got to go. I got to do it. I got to figure it out. This is like people with placements here might be like, just all of a sudden they have like this amazing like knowing and they have to do something right away.
Inspiration and just like I got to
Yeah,
write this down right now and go do it. I mean, yeah, I've had that happen myself too. You get an idea, you just run to your computer and just
yep,
start typing,
got to
get it
do it.
down. However rough it comes out, the first draft, at least you're just documenting the ideas or painting or whatever inspiration. Any artist
Yeah,
that has that lightning bolt moment.
exactly.
Interesting. So, yeah,
Yep.
the swiftness. There you go. I mean, I think that really just very
Yep.
nicely depicts the imagery of it.
Yep.
Um, very good. So
Yeah.
right, I guess anything else you wanted to add to this card or to this decan?
No, I think that's it. It is linked, as I said, to like quite literally to sickness too, to like things that like what
Diseases.
diseases, yeah, things that
Okay.
like, all of a sudden everybody's got it. And of course,
Okay.
if you don't believe in like viruses, like I don't, this
It
is
could be
like
ideas too, because we're not talking
ideas.
necessarily with like things that are transmitted through the air, like a germ or something like that. But like
Right.
viruses, it can be ideas too, very infectious,
Exactly.
or just a lot of
Yep.
other things. Um,
Yeah. Yep. Precisely. Yep.
some,
So
something that
moving to the next decan, this is also a really interesting place.
right. Yes, this is ruled by the moon
The
by Chaldean
moon,
order and Mars by triplicity.
precisely. Yep.
Right here we go. It's the Lord of Strength, actually.
Lord of strength.
Yep.
Yep.
Always love this one.
So I don't think we've seen this particular combination before yet in our decanic walk. This is the first time we have Mars and the moon sitting together in one place.
Hmm.
Um, so this decan kind of starts to recall in some ways, the second decan of Cancer, which was the walled garden.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, I remember that.
this is a place where you've got something incredibly valuable, but you're on a quest and you're moving and you're coming under attack. This
Ah,
is like you're on your way and you're in enemy territory, and you have got like you got something, you got like this. We start to get this Lord of the Rings kind of vibe out of out of the remainder of Sagittarius, as we'll examine that as we go. But this is very much like the Lord of the Rings, where you got the ring and you're on your way, and the spiders coming after you, and like you're stuck in the web and you got to find a
oh,
way out, and your horse is spooked, and like you're spooked, and you're not sure exactly how things are going to work out, and you have to look really deep inside of yourself to find this like strength to like get through the situation, which seems impossible. It seems like
mm-hmm.
everything's lost, and you're just like you're out there, hanging by a thread, but you have that like that particular like strength. And this is where Mars comes in.
Mm-hmm.
This is my Mars, by the way. I have Mars in this place.
Mm.
So it's like protecting a extremely valuable cargo. This is your Brink security officer on the on the in your armored car, but it's without an armored car here. This is like we're in a in a boat, and like there's nothing going to protect us except for our wits.
Mm-hmm.
And there's sort of this very intuitive aspect of this too, because you got the moon here. So this is like really looking inside and like having some sort of intuitive like sense. You got Mars giving you like the strength and the power to like not be afraid, or to be afraid and act regardless of that. And the moon is there to like give you that inspiration, that like that psychic kind of power to know what to do while you're under attack. So it's a pretty cool decan. It's this the RWS doesn't really get I don't often think about it as doing it really doing it justice, because it's it's just a guy with a bunch of sticks.
He's
Um,
bandaged though, so he's got a bandage
Advantage,
on his
yeah,
head,
you
right?
get
So there's
that.
a couple things there. So, well, yeah, but still, what you're saying comes through, and I think in some ways the idea of having to find your own inner strength to get you through.
Right,
9 is also associated with endings, so there's something to say with that if we're looking at it from the tarot perspective,
right,
and we're kind of bringing an end here, and
right.
kind of I don't know, the idea of a foundation, or having some kind of foundation is also something I associate with that.
Yep, yep. And it's got these the two rulers of they're both night sect planets. They're both
Yeah.
they're both about this chthonic kind of thing, the darkness, and they're in this place of Sagittarius. And we got to remember that Sagittarius is like we're facing, it's the end of fall, in terms of the northern hemisphere.
Hmm.
We're facing a lot of adversity coming up.
Right.
So there's a sense as we move into this, in through the decans of Sagittarius, that we're going into some very dark place. We're going into a
Mm.
place where we could easily lose faith. We could easily be put off by the fact that maybe we don't have enough food left. So we got to go out hunting. We got to and
Preparation.
then you get the Sagittarian, like the horse again. We're going out to hunt. We're gonna we got to be really in tune with our steed. This is also this decan has a lot of images of horses, as we get with all of Sagittarius.
Yep. Yep.
um so there's also a sense with this decan of being able to like talk to your steed, like the moon. The moon is animals. You get the moon with this kind of pre-verbal
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Mhm.
The
Yeah, with the moon, also a white horse used to represent the moon, and in some old crests you see, or a unicorn actually. Sorry, my bad, not really hard. A horse,
Yep,
but it's pretty much the same idea. Like you see the red line and the white unicorn on some crests.
right,
That's the same.
absolutely. Yep,
So
that's the
that's
very
that lunar
English.
component. Yeah, yeah, royalty.
Yeah,
Uh,
royalty. Yep, exactly.
right.
So yeah, so let's move on to the final decan of this.
Yes. The third
Which
decan of Sagittarius is ruled by Saturn, by the Chaldean order, and the Sun by triplicity. So the 10 of Wands is the card associated with it,
Yep,
which is the Lord of Oppression.
Lord of Oppression. Yep.
Lord of Oppression. There you go. Carrying a very heavy burden, 10 staffs. if you've never tried doing that, just try it, and you'll see actually it's a pretty difficult thing to actually manage to keep them all together and also hold the weight of
Yep.
all that. So
Yeah.
you're somebody who's definitely very weighed down with this
Right.
Saturnian element there
Yeah.
of carrying a very heavy load.
Yeah.
But yet the sun is there too, so there's that kind of optimistic brightness, the solar qualities. But okay, I'll let you elaborate on
Yeah.
it.
So this decan is associated. You'll often get images of like a guy with a cudgel, like whacking another guy with a crown, like whacking another guy in the head.
Oh,
This
with the
is
crown.
Yeah. So the guy. So it's basically you've got like a This is a place of like assassination of rulers. This is a place where the king has to die. The king must die here. This is you've got Sun and Saturn, so you've got these two very antithetical characters, and all of the, as we've seen so far, in all of the decans that have Sun and Saturn. So far, we had the end of Gemini, we had the beginning of Leo. We're both these are Sun and Saturn places,
Right.
and
That
they're
was
all conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
They're all conflicted, and this is the most conflicted of them all. So we're in a mutable sign in the mutable decan of that sign. So this is the end of the road, essentially. This is where the king.
This is the cusp of the winter solstice too, where we're about to, at the end of this, go into winter fully. So Saturn is about to take over, and the sun. So
Exactly.
it's interesting. The sun and Saturn rule it, but the sun is bowing out here essentially, or essentially it's in Saturn's territory, and Saturn's taking the baton.
Exactly.
So at this very point. So
yeah, it is the end of the it's the end of the road for the sun. Basically, he's about to be reborn essentially at the solstice. So this is the death of the sun essentially. So you're getting a lot of the the vibe of that from this decan. So natives that are that have important placements or an angle here, this is often a place of how do you say it, of like being able to stay calm when things are going really bad, when there's an emergency, where there's like something's gone horribly bad. There's typically like keeping your composure under extreme pressure. When this is like back to the Lord of the Rings thing. This is when like Frodo and Samwise are going up the side of Mount Doom, and they're being harassed. They're so tired, they can't believe that they've made it this far, and they can't handle it anymore. But then more is coming at them. More and more and more is coming. The whole mountain is starting to explode. This is like it couldn't get any worse. But then they managed to hold it together, and they throw that ring away. So this is this is a place where there's no like passing the test. It's like you either pass the test or you fail the test. You either you do the thing or you don't do the thing. This is
there's no try. It's just you do or you don't do. Essentially,
exactly.
Do or die.
Yeah. The one of the stories for this decan is the marathon, when you've got the original story of the marathon, where you've got the Greeks were ambushed, and like almost everybody was killed in the army, and there's like the ruler, the general says to the one guy who's left there, like, you got to go tell everybody in Athens what's coming, and you got to get there before they do. And if the guy doesn't get there before they do, and he like takes a nap, or if he stops along the way, and like or if he's too sick or something, then he fails. Everything's lost. This is so people with placements here will tend to perform really well under pressure. The problem here can be like everything can seem like it's life or death to these people, like not being able to get out of that mode of like where it's an emergency, we need to do this, we need to do that, like they become a dictator and like take control when it's not necessary, and if you don't, it's not always an emergency.
That's the Saturnian controlling complex there coming through.
Yeah, exactly.
There with the sun again, and the sun too. I mean, the sun's all about authority too, but in this case, in a very Saturnian way, that's very, very limiting and very, very narrow, because it's like, we have this goal, we have to do it just this way, and there's just no other way. I'm just like looking straight forward. I'm just plowing through. Kind of. I mean, you speak of people with this placements here, and a few people kind of come to mind. No one famous off the top of my head, but just people I've met. So,
Right.
I definitely get that. And I mean, Sagittarius is still a fire sign, right? So we're almost in winter. It's the last bit of fire before then we have, earth and air and water, and then we don't get a fire sign again until spring with Aries. So
Right.
it's the last burning coals, right,
Yeah.
of the fire.
Yeah. It's going out with flames. Definitely. It's
Hmm.
going down with flames. There's no question. This is like, this is the yeah, it's a big
It's the
explosion.
last gasp of the sun before
Yeah,
it fully
exactly.
dies, but it's still going to
Before it, yeah,
finish its task, its mission.
right, exactly. So it's a fascinating decan. Again, there's a lot of images and a lot of potential for rulers getting killed here, for like there
Mhm.
being like a change of the guard. The next one comes, and there's a lot of potential for brutality here. This is it's not
Mm.
a friendly place. It's again, it's kind of like the first decan of Leo, where we had the people getting up to perform, and it's
And
like,
you're being judged on stage, right?
yeah, you're being judged on stage. This is very much that way, but it's like the stakes here are very high. This isn't just like a contest. This is the
Mhm.
end. This is, it's either you
Yep.
do it or it's over, essentially.
Hmm. But it's that pressure, that essentially is what is essentially that tension is what's actually allowing for, well, in some cases, some people to perform to their best, because with
Right.
pressure comes oftentimes it really not exacerbates, but it really brings out that quality, both the Saturnian and solar, in natives with placements here. I could see that.
Yep.
Uh,
Yep. Precisely. Yeah. Very Game of Thrones stuff going on here. It's
hmm.
yeah, very, it's dark.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's the end of the season. You're yeah,
Mm.
it's a fascinating place, but it's definitely a dangerous place. One other thing that I've heard is that there's a surviving car accidents is a common thing that people with placements here manage to
Yes.
do, like
Mm.
getting through something that's if you survive a car accident and you actually you don't really have much time to think about it, but still we do things when that happens. We make
Mm.
decisions, and we manage to, like, if you move an inch, or like you turn your body or whatever it is, you can manage to survive something that somebody who doesn't have that little bit of like of consciousness and ability to like hold it together. And it's often could be that just a millisecond where something you do
Mm.
keeps you alive, versus like
Right.
that.
That's interesting. You bring that up, like to look at transits for that, for survivors of accidents, perhaps with having like something that's some planet transiting that area, or making an aspect to that particular part of the zodiac. I didn't think about that
Right.
in terms of surviving. Well, any near death experience, a car accident could be one, but other near death
Yeah. Yep.
encounters.
Yep.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yep. So that's our deckhand walk up until we're done with fall now. So we've seen
Yeah.
all of the fire signs thus far. We've seen like the whole story of fire played out.
Hmm.
We've gotten through we're going to get a little bit more of everything else at this point. Um, but yeah, you get to see like this overall picture, and it's quite fascinating, because you could easily go through all of this again and like really start making the connections between, because then you have decans are related by trines, decans are related by oppositions, decans are
Hmm.
related by by squares, and you can start to
Sure.
see other things happening like within the stories, and you get different stories.
Elemental stories, like you said, we just had off air, but to go back and review Aries and then Leo and Sagittarius and see the relations, that's fascinating.
Right.
We'll do the
Yeah.
same with water, air, and earth. Yeah, right. So yeah, for the next episode, we'll be looking at Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces to finish up.
Mhm.
So keeping we'll have that up. We'll have that up. In a few weeks' time, probably. Well, that's, I guess, a wrap for this. Thank you, Michael, very much for joining me today to discuss this. It's been a pleasure. I think this has been my favorite, maybe, of all the parts we've done so far. A very, very in
Excellent.
depth. Maybe because we went over like a lot of personal placements, so probably a lot more relevant for me personally. But
Right.
thank
Nice.
you.
Nice.
You have a lot of great insights that I really appreciate. You
Well,
come out,
thank you.
come out
Thank you.
speaking
My
to my
pleasure.
audience.
It's very useful too for like I use it in my astrology all the time. It's like this is one of the bedrocks for me when I do readings. It's very, very useful, and it's
Hmm.
it's in some ways you just don't know how incredible it's going to be until you really start using it. So
Yeah, I want to start working with it more. So very good. Well, all right. Thank you everyone for listening to this episode of the Wheel of Ezekiel Astrology Podcast. Until next time, as above, so below, as within, as without.